Now coming up in part 2, we're going to be going to a very special place, which was the Arizona Cardinals Stadium. We're going to talk with the groundskeeper there about what he's doing with the field right now currently, what he's kind of done in the past with it at this time of year, and how that's different because of what's going on in the world right now. There's going to be a lot of insight there that he shared with us, so stay tuned for part 2. So we got to take a trip out to the Arizona Cardinals Stadium as, of course, Evergreen produces the sod for this field. It was really neat to see it in person, but also get to talk to an NFL groundskeeper who does this day in and day out, some of the challenges that they have, and some of the things that they deal with on a field like this. So the first thing you might notice is that the field right now is kind of in a transition point. So usually there's ryegrass on this field a lot longer going into the spring season, but because they don't have any events going on, they decided to transition this out early and get the Bermuda going as soon as they can.
Right now we just have to do our best to get rid of it. So we sprayed it out. We're starting to lightly patch it out. Run a power rake through it and a drag and get rid of all that old thatch. And
so
yeah, just wait until.
Why are you in such a hurry to get rid of such a pretty grass so quick?
It's not going to serve us any purpose. We don't have any events on it until summertime. So at some point we're going to need to transition, so it's better for us to transition now before.
Especially when it's younger and not as established, easier to give your Bermuda.
It's competing with the grass that we're going to use next.
Yeah.
And when are you going to use the Bermuda grass next? What's your next big event?
Tentative is going to be training camp next year.
Which is July?
Yeah, it will be July. So
you need to be 100% not just covered, but healthy turf that can take.
Established. Strong as we can possibly get at grass.
Because training camp for you is different than most training camps. Because most training camps are outdoors on 2 to 3 fields. You're running your training camp on 1 field.
So the wear is about triple the amount.
Well, and it goes from outside in the sunshine at 110 degrees to inside that building in about 75 degrees. So you're shaded and air conditioned, so you get no recovery once training camp starts.
Yeah, so we go about 23 to 26 days during training camp. We have practice on this field when it's inside, and it really doesn't get any relief. But again, that's one of the reasons we're transitioning out of the ryegrass right now to get this thing as strong, as established as we can. So sometimes you got to go a step back to go forward in the grass world. So that's where we're at now. We took a big step back, but it'll put us way ahead of schedule by the time we get to the next schedule event. And typically we'll have some soccer events in between here and football where it would limit my ability to do this. So if we had a soccer game in March, April, May, we would push that ryegrass along all the way through and then think about transitioning out of there, which aesthetically makes transition a little bit easier for us. It's easier on the eye to transition once the Bermuda grass starts to come back, but again, that's not always the best for the plant. So,
how long have you been doing this for the Cardinals and being the head guy behind it?
We've been going on 20th season with the team, 21st season with the team. So was with the team for 6 years at the training facility, and left and worked baseball for 6 years, and then when we opened this building in 2006, came back to manage this building and the training facility as well.
What's very unique about this field too is that it's brought outside to be grown and then it's taken back into the stadium.
What is the biggest challenge that you face with a retractable field versus the guy who doesn't have to have his field get wheeled off and in and out?
One of the biggest challenges is in the summertime when we're up over 100 and 110 degrees. This field's 100% Bermuda grass. We bring it inside, and in order to for player comfort and fan comfort, we pre-cool this building into the 60s. So we'll bring it in on a Friday, and it'll come out on a Monday. And as you know, 3 days with the soil in the 60s, it's a challenge for the soil, and it tends to think we're going into fall, or it's starting
to shut down a little.
Starting to shut down a little bit. So that's a challenge for us. Again, it's it's minor compared to somebody who has to deal with shade issues, or don't have to deal with clear skies 361 days a year. It is a challenge for us, but again, I think we're way ahead of anybody else in the league as far as ability to grow a safe, reliable surface.
When do you guys overseed typically?
Yeah, great question. Jimmy loves that one. So when the schedule comes out, typically in April, we'll circle a couple dates that we'll have windows to where the team goes away for a couple weeks, and we'll have some time to get that done. But typically, all throughout the year, we're freshening this up. As soon as we lay grass following training camp, we'll dust it with some ryegrass, and then we're going to freshen this thing up all year round. So every time we play here, we're gonna dust it with some ryegrass. The answer is often. Yeah, almost weekly. Whenever the team plays, we're seeding this field. Unfortunately, we play a majority of our games on the juvenile ryegrass. The ryegrass is a great surface to play on, but as the overseeding process has it, we go into it with a Bermuda grass, and then we introduce ryegrass into it. So we're playing on grass that was sitting on a shelf 2 weeks prior.
When they have training camp here, Andy's faced with either trying to get it back into game shape in usually 2 to 3 weeks, or resod it before the season starts. And generally that's 1 to 2 weeks before your first game. And he's trying to get a newly sodded field to go 7 to 8 games, which is almost unheard of. But that's the challenge he's given. The nice thing is that he can move it out. They don't have to have concerts, other non-grass events on this field.
Yeah.
But still, when you go inside and you cool it to 65 degrees and you send this into shock, kind of rule of thumb is however many days it spends indoors, it takes that many days outdoors for it to start to regrow again, because that soil temperature needs to come back up, that plant needs to come out of that shock. And so if he's got back-to-back games near the front of the season, you can lose a whole week of growth for one game. So it may be an advantage to be able to take it out and not have wear on it, but it's a disadvantage because you lose a week of growth every time you have a game.
Like Jimmy said, if we have a back-to-back week, we're inside for 8 days out of 14. So that's 8 days where we're really going backwards in the process. So it beats having shade issues and having concerts on this, but it has been something that we've had to deal with throughout the years.
Yeah, so you hear a lot of other people say, he's had success because that field moves in and out, but they just don't realize that it shortens his growing season almost in half sometimes.
Yeah.
So there's give and take.
Sure.
I think what was also interesting to learn here is that there's always challenges to growing grass. Whether you're just a homeowner or you're at the highest level here for NFL fields, there's always something going on to where you can learn something every single season.
I always like to have Jimmy come out here, and I like going out there, like I said, just to put another set of eyes on it. Just to say, okay, you look at it every day, what do you see?
Yeah, we've been working together for more than 13 years, but we change something every single year. And the goals that we originally thought we had in doing this have changed. Originally we thought that everything we did here we would mirror at the farm. Mm-hmm. But then we began to realize that we actually can't do that, because many times what we're doing at the farm, we have a goal of being ready in 8 weeks from now or 10 weeks from now. And therefore we need to be doing something different to get ready. And it's been a challenge, actually, we found the last few years to anticipate when that's going to happen. Because, for instance, when we need to verticut at the farm, we have to take in consideration how long it's going to take to recover, bring it up here and look good. And sometimes we don't think we have enough time, and what happens if you don't verticut, you get too thatchy. Mm-hmm. And it's a game where you got to weigh that out sometimes as we get closer to the end of training camp. Are we going to sod or are we not going to sod? If we do sod, how much are we going to sod? How much do we have to get ready? Well, we don't want to do the whole field, because what if we need to resod 4 weeks after that? So it's really, we've learned a lot, and we change it every single year, trying to get better every single year.
What was the big change from, just for an example, from a year to year where you talked about being ahead and not doing the same exact thing, but like this last year, as far as where you were in let's say a 2019 season versus a 2020 season?
So I think we're all challenged with COVID, not knowing what schedules were really going to be. And from a farm level, actually, we were challenged because we had one of our biggest years ever, but we had a labor problem. And everybody was challenged with having enough labor, and there's just certain things we couldn't get done. And so we probably came into the season a little too thatchy because we didn't get on some of this stuff, and not knowing when we were going to need so much. Nobody could tell us if we're going to have a season. And so there were some challenges on being ready on time and having everything at the stage of growth you wanted it. And I think for us, having two teams with two different schedules now made it really tough, because you're trying to meet two different levels of grass sometimes, and it's really hard to do, because you can't always be perfect every day of the year. Because when you verticut and scalp and top dress, you're 4 to 6 weeks sometimes to recover to what you would call game quality. It doesn't come back in 1 week.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to weigh that out with, which team, which field, how much time do they have after we sod before their game, and sometimes we guess wrong.
I think that's foreign to a lot of people who aren't in this space or looking at it, is that two guys who make their living doing this at the highest level, your stuff isn't always looking perfect, at that exact moment, because your goal is 4 weeks out where I'm going to peak, and I have to look ugly as far as from a turf standpoint, today, right now, but you're thinking about already next fall and that Bermuda base and being as good as you can. So I think so many people think that this field would always look absolutely perfect like it is on game day, but you have to have pain to look good on those days you need it. So.
Yeah, we could probably make it look at all, every day of the year, but we're missing an opportunity right here to where that ryegrass isn't going to be utilized until later in the year. So we can get rid of it now to have a better product going into the season.
So that brings up a really good point, Andy. It's like, what is your number one criteria going into game day for your field?
It's always 100% of the time player safety.
Player safety.
Every single game, every time we have an event out here, whether it be my team, somebody else's team, a bowl game, a soccer game, it's always paramount, player safety. And then we work on the aesthetics from there.
And it's a struggle, because you never want to look bad on television. But you're like...
Sometimes you do.
Sometimes you do, but you know that it's going to play better because of some of the actions you've taken. And we went through that challenge this last year a couple times. There are some times we didn't look probably as good as we should have. Nobody else knows that. But it's because we were geared towards player safety first and the way this field played, and we're more worried about the way it played than the way it looked.
I think there's a common myth in this world as far as like his audience, as a homeowner base who maybe wants a high-end lawn, always thinks that they're going to look perfect, or that's the goal, and it can be, but I mean, there's times where it's Mother Nature too. It's a plant, it's a living thing. It's not always perfect. So it's interesting to hear it from like the best guys in the game and in the world at this, that there's challenges for everybody.
Of course, we didn't get to see the field being moved back in, but we did briefly talk about how that happens and about how long it takes for it to happen.
1.5 horse electric motors and little wheels that ride on these rails. So it's just a big cake pan. Holds 11 inches of sand, 11.5 inches of sand, that contains also the drainage system and the irrigation system. All hooks up outside, unhook it and roll it in for game day. 440 volts. How many motors, Andy?
It's 76 1-horsepower motors. So there's 13 tracks that run across the field, and the 2 tracks on either end are powered by the 76 horsepower or 76 1-horsepower motors.
So how long does it take to move?
It takes about an hour to get inside. We'll move it in halfway, and the power cord needs to be swapped to the other side, so travel time is about an hour.
It's very quick, actually quicker than it was originally engineered, I believe. But 'cause originally it was like an hour and a half. When they designed Vegas, they actually added, you can see here where you've got these 2 ends that kind of abruptly end right there. In Vegas, they built a bridge across, what they call a bridge, and permitted end zone seating on the inside. So their field actually sits out a little farther, and it actually takes an hour and a half to roll in the Vegas field, even though the field is smaller than this field. So some design differences that they were able to take from the Cardinals and improve on for certain circumstances up in Vegas. kind of nice to have been the first prototype and be able to improve on it. You can only hope that future fields moving forward will do the same thing. Because if natural grass is the way they want to go, this is the best system to have your cake and eat it too, to have natural grass football games and concert for the different surface.
So want to thank Andy at the Cardinals for speaking to us there and taking time out of his day. Of course, thank Jimmy Fox from Evergreen Turf for taking a better part of a day to go around the sod farm and talk to us and go to the Cardinal Stadium and kind of give his insight as well. And of course, Chase from Turf Merchants for inviting me down on this trip. Had an absolute blast, something that I hope to go back and see again. There's so much insight that I could get from Jimmy. I feel like I just barely touched the iceberg on all of the different things I'd like to chat with him about. So maybe we'll be back in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.